With binary, we explored the fundamentals of computers and how they understand data. Now we can move on to the actual parts, the body parts, so to speak, of a computer. Let's start with the brain of the computer, and that's going to be in the processing hardware. So the brain of the computer is the CPU, or the central processing unit. It's the one that actually executes instructions from software programs. It's the one that processes the data, does all the computing, right? That's why we call them a computer, and it manages the tasks that keep the computer running smoothly. So that's why we call it the brain or the control center. If you remember back in the history of computers, CPUs or chips are a type of integrated circuit. So we're able to fit all these signals right onto a really small piece of real estate, basically. We're talking about semiconductors. That's why we're able to, turn on and off that electricity. So it turns out modern computers, they're dealing with billions to trillions of electrical signals per second. That's how powerful these CPUs are. These CPUs have actually smaller processors inside them. We call those cores. They're like mini CPUs. So that's why computers can do all the cool stuff that they can do. Now, of course, back then, CPUs a lot less powerful. That's why they were limited, right, in what they could do. For example, we used to deal with command line interface, where the only way you could tell the computer what to do was to type in commands. Nowadays, we deal with graphical user interfaces, where you can actually see buttons and pictures and icons, things that are familiar to us humans. We're going to discuss interfaces actually as a part of our software discussion. So this is what a CPU looks like. On the left, we have a rendered visual of a CPU from Intel. Intel, of course, a company that develops and creates CPUs for commercial use, personal use. And then on the right, we have the architecture of a CPU. We have the CPU, input goes in, output goes out. If it needs to save some information, it'll send it to some kind of memory unit. And if you notice inside the CPU, there are other components there. Arithmetic logic unit, arithmetic as in math, it is doing literally addition, multiplication. That's what it's doing with those zeros and ones to do all the cool stuff we want computers to do, to transform those zeros and ones into information that makes sense to us.